Welcome back to my video series, Fun with Dashcams. Today we're going to be covering the probably more creative, but also sometimes slightly more frustrating approach to dashcams, the do-it-yourself, the roll-your-own dashcam, where any old camera you have laying around just might do. We're going to start by talking about your different camera options. You know, what would work that's within easy reach that you may have in the closet that you may be using for something else that you could relatively easily repurpose for a dash cam. We're going to be covering the mounting options that you will have, and my primary example I'll be covering here in a minute to give you a practical as to what you can pull off, probably the easiest and the cheapest. We'll be talking about some of the pros, the good, the cons, the bad, and really the not so ugly, the acceptable annoyances. Some things you'll have to put up with when you follow this approach when you don't have something that's purchased as a designed and dedicated product. So when we talk about our different camera options, what are some of the more popular options? Well, the first one should be pretty apparent. Action cameras. What are they? They're cameras that are intended to capture video at very good resolution rates and at very high frame rates, 30 to 60 frames a second. They're typically high def and beyond, 1920 by 1080 or higher, which would put you well in the upper range of what most dash cams are. Some other options, some other benefits to this is the fact that it gives you a very fluid motion because you have those high frame rates of capture. Oftentimes it gives you an option that a lot of dash cams may not, which is extended recording. Most purpose-built dash cams will record usually in given segments of 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute. You may want to make a recording for your own purposes for whatever reason that goes, say, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or whatever. And you may want it in a much higher resolution. Of course, you can always sacrifice resolution and quality, granularity in the video for time on your storage media, which is one of the things you'll have to deal with, and we'll cover that under the not the bad section. Some of your other options you may have, and when we talk about action cameras, GoPros, the Mobius camera, I believe there's the J4000 or the S4000. You know, there's lots of cheaper little Chinese-made action cameras. The bullet cameras that used to be sold a few years ago, not so good, but apparently they've had some pretty nice ones that have come up in the market in the last year or so. Another option would be an old SD or SSD, like your Panasonics or your Canons, your little $150 SD card driven cameras. One of the things that's nice about that is the fact that they have very good optical zooms. It's a camcorder, so it's intended to be carried around to give you a very good picture quality, to be able to zoom in from a distance, to be able to be mounted on a tripod, which will come in handy when we start talking about mounting options. And also the image stabilization. Most dash cams don't have the image stabilization, and you'll see an example of this in my DIY setup that I'm going to show you in a video that I took earlier today. Why image stabilization is a big deal. You might have an old flip cam laying around. Those were those old cameras that had a little USB port, USB, not a cable, but an arm basically, to be able to plug into the USB port on your computer. Usually they were USB 2.0, so they're a little bit older. You might find variations of that on the market. The big thing about those is, as long as they can fit in some type of a cradle, or as long as they support a standard 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch mount, like most of your some of your action cam cases or your regular old handy cams or camcorders would use. So flip cam is a very viable option, especially if you have something laying around. It can record at 640 by 480. That's standard definition. That might get what you need. Or before they left the market, several of them actually did record in HD. They're very handy, they're very convenient, very easy to use, and it's just a matter of plugging them up and turning them on, and you're ready to go. Multi-purpose. This could be like, say, what may be termed a body cam. I give an example that I'll be doing a review a little bit later on the VO view. It's a very small little body cam, regular. It's not an action cam, but they do sell small action cams, and it's really just a matter of finding a way to mount it. My personal favorite, and I think the one that would be most attractive to everybody, is an old smartphone. I refer to it as the poor man's option, because when you think about it, how many smartphones have you gone through in the last couple of years? You sign a 2-year plan, and what do you typically do? Some people will trade in a phone, but most people will end up buying a new phone after 2-3 years. So what do you do with that old phone? Well, it ends up getting thrown in the drawer. Well, hell with that. Pull it out of the drawer, wipe it, do a factory reset on it, and let's see about putting it back to use. I mean, you spend a lot of money on it. Maybe you should recoup some of that. And these are the reasons why I said that that's a very handy option. They're usually readily available. You probably already have one. If you don't already have one, you can probably get one from someone for free. You can, of course, buy one. You're never going to use it as a phone again unless you want to. There are reasons you may want to do that, but that may be covered as a different topic in another video. We're primarily concerned about recording the video in front of the car for safety and insurance purposes. So, having a cell plan is really outside of the scope of that. It might be an option, if you feel you absolutely have to have recording, and we'll cover that in the later part of this presentation. So we talk about mounting options, and I'm going to be using the cell phone, the old smartphone, as an option when I'm discussing these. What are our different options? Well, we covered briefly. We have two main places, the windshield and the dashboard, hence the dash cam. But other creative options will do. For example, we have maybe a standard window mount. This is an old sconce. Bought it at Walmart for about $10. It's a gooseneck, so it can be bent and twisted in many different ways, and it can be mounted on the windshield. And I actually had it mounted so that it was sitting under the mirror. And my old phone, I was using it for GPS and for hands-free for a while, and it can be adjusted, so with a camera facing on this side or that side, as long as you have a good field of view to allow your camera to capture as much as possible without an obstruction. Downside of this, of course, is you might have a small obstruction, but depending upon your mount option for a windscreen suction mount, it might work just fine. An option that I actually use, but not for a dash cam, but instead for a GPS, because that's what I like to use my phone for, is maybe something that not only can mount on a windscreen, but with this kind of a surface. It's rubberized silicone, and it's kind of tacky. I don't know if you can see that, but it kind of sticks to my finger. This actually adheres to even a slightly rough surface, but it's really will give you a good seal on a rather flat surface. And what's nice about this is it can be mounted, say, on the dash, and it won't come off. So it gives you a nice, not a permanent, but a nice temporary, but perfectly serviceable mount option on the dashboard itself. Reason why that's good is your municipality may not allow you to put anything on the windscreen, but the dashboard is fair game, and it keeps it out of your view, puts it down near the bottom. It may also be able to repurpose the phone as a GPS as well as a dash cam. It just kind of depends. That's why I said your data plan may or may not be necessary. Well, let's say if you have a very rough textured dashboard, no problem. You can get one of these adhesive tabs. This is one that was actually for a GPS for a different kit made by Sconce. I bought a while back, but it broke. But I can just simply take the 3M backing on, stick it on the dash, and now I could put my mount. Just like, it's basically, think about the same options you have with mounting a GPS, you have for mounting a dash cam. So put that in, adhere it, and now I've got a nice smooth surface to keep my mount on, and I can put it on my dash in case that is the only option I really have. So when we talked about creative options, remember that most of your camcorders, your flip cams, typically had a 1/4 screw-on mount for putting it on, some type of a mount, some type of a tripod. Well, that can work for something like this too. This is actually an action cam mount or a camcorder mount. Really, it's for a set of handlebars for a motorcycle, a bicycle, whatever. You know, so you can mount your action camera. Well, if you're using your action camera as a dash cam, this might be a consideration. You know, you have different angles that you can tie it on. You can easily screw on and mount. And you might actually be able to use this, say, on the rear view mirror. Most rear view mirrors will probably be a little too narrow on the neck, but some of them, you know, may give you a nice surface that you can then, you know, tie this onto, crank it down, and then set your angle, attach your camera, and you may be good to go with that. Also consider that with this kind of mount, a lot of your kits, like your GoPros and other action cameras, may actually have, like, say, a surface mount to be able to adhere that to a flat surface, maybe for a helmet, it may be for, say, the outside of the car, but hey, your dashboard is probably just as good a place as any. And you could put that on and mount your GoPro or your Morbius or whatever, and now you've got a dash cam. So for the sake of this exercise, I just wanted to show, you know, here is, let's say this is my dash and this is the windscreen up ahead. I've got my old cell phone. I turn it on. And almost every single version of Android, this is an Android phone of course, has a built-in camera. Well, not only can it take still pictures, it can also take video too. Set your resolution. In this case I have it set for 720 by 480, and the reason for that is because this is a pretty underpowered phone. It actually gives a pretty good video. So now I've got a camera faced forward, I don't have any obstructions, and now I can just hit start, and now I'm recording. So, you know, and that's why I say creative options. You know, what do you have to work with? What are you trying to achieve? What are your limitations? You can cover all those questions in the previous intro video, but you can then take what you've learned from that and then start actually applying it. Have fun, play around, see what you can do. So now we start talking about the good. As I've already alluded to, availability. This is probably a camera you already have. You probably already have a GoPro for, you know, biking or motorcycling or whatever. Well, you probably have an available mount laying around. If you're using it for, say, a helmet cam, you probably have a flat mount that you can easily put on your dash. You can now push your GoPro into the service of a dash cam or whatever. You know, like I said, you will have to kind of dig around your closet, see what you have, see all those pieces that you bought that you never use it. Well, maybe now you have a chance to use it. Availability also is, you know, the camera itself. Like I said, in this example, it's a cell phone. Well, this phone I use, but one day I'm going to get rid of it. Or why not just keep it? I actually was using an older LG 35 phone that I used for my old dash cam. It recorded at 640 by 480 and actually did a pretty good job. And I drove around for a while before I finally bought a couple of purpose-built dash cams for that reason. Cost, like I said, if you reuse, repurpose, recycle, what do you have available? This is probably going to be your cheapest option because it might be free, or if not free, someone may have an old camera or an old phone laying around to let you use. This is why I said old smartphone, because you have many mount options. So what's the bad? First and foremost, because you do not have something that's specifically designed, you're probably going to have a little bit of manual manipulation. For example, most camcorders, most GoPros, things like that, most action cameras, and just the plain Jane video recorder option on a cell phone, they don't have loop recording. That is a very important feature of the dash cam, to be able to recycle the memory. Just keep right until you hit the bottom and then start over. But actually that's not a hurdle that cannot be overcome, and we'll cover that in a little bit. No record on power. Again, the phone is on. Most phones don't automatically turn on when power hits the power port on the camera. on the device. So you will have to manually activate it. You'll have to manually put it into some type of record mode, maybe. Another problem is no auto power off, and maybe even no GPS. Your smartphone may or may not have had GPS that came with it, depending on how old it is. But this is a big one, is no auto power off. The reason you would use, say, a cell phone or a GoPro or something is the assumption that either you are going to make an effort to turn it off every time, or you're just putting it in there temporarily, say in a cradle like I had on the dash or on the windscreen. You're probably using it for something else, but you may decide you want to use it to record stuff on the road. The important thing is you're putting it in a mount. That way you don't have this thing waggling around in your hand and being a distraction to you and taking your hands off the steering wheel. So that's why I'm a big advocate. If you're going to do something like that, make sure you use a mount. If you feel like you need to move it around a lot, use one of the goosenecks like I had. You can always put them back in shape, and they're cheap. You can always replace them if they break. If you feel like you don't need to move it around, hey, put a more permanent mount. Maybe spend a couple, $20-30 to get something. For example, this setup was basically a free phone. This I actually bought as a generic mount to use for a GPS unit I used to have. Another camera plus a cell phone. I use my cell phone now for GPS. This cost me about $30. Bought it at Best Buy. No LCD off. Again, what was one of the very important safety features of purpose-built dash cams is generally they turn the screen off if they have a built-in screen. Well, your cell phone typically doesn't do that. My experience has been once you turn that camera on to record, just the generic camera feature, it's going to record and it's going to keep the screen rolling because that's what it wants to do. It's not intended to be a dash cam. It's intended to be just a camera. Well, so that's something you got to think about. Is that going to be a distraction? Maybe, maybe not. Well, okay, and the not so ugly. Number one, you have a camera. We've covered before the basic hardware. What makes a camera: the lens, the sensor, and the ability to encode and to store it. Well, the GoPro, your old cell phone, your old flip cam, there you go. You've already got it. You probably already, like I said, probably already have a mount, especially if you're going to use an old cell phone. You probably have an old mount you bought for the car at some point in the past. Take it out, put them together, put them to use. Manual operation and portability. This is probably not so big of a hindrance if in fact you plan to pull the phone out. This may be the phone you have now. And what we're about to cover in a second is most important reason, portability, because you can take it with you. So if you're going to make that as part of your habit, it is a phone you're going to be using day in, day out. This is just going to be another function of that smartphone, and they're very flexible. Then this may not be a concern for you. You've already got a mount. You're just going to put it in a different place. You're just going to activate it to record when you need to, and when you're done, you turn it off and you take it out and carry it, and poof, it's your regular cell phone again. Why I'm a big advocate of recycling smartphones is because software options. You can get different apps from your stores, from the Google Play, from iTunes. From both of these marketplaces, there are many different products. Of course, there are many free options. I always recommend go ahead and upgrading after you've decided on one you like. Go ahead and upgrade to the Pro option. You're not paying for any hardware, and usually it's like $5. So say a free camera, a mount you have laying around, and $3 to $5 for an Dashcam app. And poof, you've actually got a good product because it overcomes several of the hurdles that dash cams are known for. I mean that they are intended for, and that cell phones are not. Like we said, power. The screen off, being able to do GPS logging. We'll cover that in a second. So with Android, definitely yes. Apple iOS, definitely yes. BlackBerry, not so much. So if you have an old BlackBerry, your options are very limited, if non-existent. So old cheap prepaid phones that you may have laying around. Like I used to have an LG 900. Yes, it had a camera, but it recorded at 3GP and only recorded for a minute at a time. It could record a little bit more than that, but generally it would crap out if I tried to record much more than that. So you want to look for a good smartphone that's Android or an old Apple, an old iOS. You don't want to use any of your prepaid LG, Samsungs, whatever, that are not an Android or not a BlackBerry, because you want to probably invest in the software. That's what makes it even more worth your while. So software options. These are not the know-all be-all. These are just two very common and very popular examples. Came on road in AutoGuard. And for the iOS, it's called Eyewitness or Witness. And they also have a product which is called Dashcam Pro, which is a very popular one. It's probably one of the oldest and most polished, most versatile. I encourage you to go check them out. There are videos on YouTube. You can look at different reviews. And all of these, as far as I know, you can download a free version to play around with. And I say don't keep the free version. The developers spent a lot of time and a lot of effort to really polish these things, a lot of them. So, go ahead and pay them for their efforts and unlock the real potential of those products. What's $3, $4? You probably pay that much in a soda or a beer. So one of the reasons is because you've already got your audio and video, you're good to go. You've got your camera. But with these different products, every one of these actually allows for GPS logging. Some of these actually do allow for an overlay to be put on the video. But either way, most of your smartphones, especially your Androids in the last 3 to 5 years, and your iOS phones, any of your Apple iPhones, already have a GPS transceiver built in. So you've already got GPS logging available. You just need the software to unlock it. So you got video and audio, you got GPS. And what's really interesting is some of these actually do offer an option to use the Wi-Fi connection. As soon as it makes a connection, say you pull it out, walk into your house, the phone connects to your Wi-Fi at home, it will actually then back up any of the videos it has stored. Oh yeah, and because these are Dashcam apps, they will also allow loop recording. So you can provision a certain amount of memory, and based upon how much memory you've set up and what resolution you're setting the camera for, it may act, and the frame rates and all that. Some of these give real good granularity on the settings. So you can really pack some video into a small space, and then you can take those video files and it will automatically be backed up. So that's an option to really look for that most normal dash cams don't provide. So that Wi-Fi will allow it to automatically back up. In case the phone craps out, the memory card gets spoiled, you've got that, or in case it gets destroyed or lost for whatever reason. So you would have that backed up for you and for later retrieval. This is also a handy feature because some of them will actually allow an automatic backup to some cloud storage if you actually have a data plan on an active phone. So that's something to maybe look at too. Kind of out of scope. That's more an option for certain other apps out there like Bamboozer, which is used for something else. But even that you could use. It's a video recording app. It streams. You might decide to use that. It's your phone, your hardware, your option. Go play. Go have fun. All right. So that pretty much concludes our practical. Now I'm going to show you an example and the reason why you need to consider your mounting options. We're going to, as soon as the monitor comes over here, sorry about this. So you can see I've got a Windows 7 desktop running over here. I took a few videos earlier today while the mount was in the car and my phone was turned onto a camera, and this is an example of a video. I'm going to go in. So we've got our audio and video. We're mounted, and as you can see, we've got pretty much a 100-degree view of the road. It doesn't give you full wrap between fenders, but it does at least give you a view through the front of the car, and that's really the point of this. That's what we're looking for. As you can see, it's down a little bit lower, so in this case I would want to position it up, aiming up a little bit higher to capture, say, traffic lights, signs, anything like that, to show if I'm driving through. say an intersection and somebody hit me, I can show that in fact, my light was green, the other guy was red, and that really will play in for your insurance, your liability, because sometimes you don't have a police officer. In fact, many times you don't. A lot of places they won't even respond. You'll be the one that has to fill out the claim, has to fill out some kind of an accident report. And you'll kind of notice, I don't know if you can really notice, but you notice how we're kind of wobbling up and down. And really when we start getting at speed here, I'm going to skip ahead a few frames. So, oh yeah, that was one thing. So here we're kind of driving up to back of a car. Let's say we had this car that suddenly went in reverse and about to hit us. You notice that we got a license plate. Pretty good clarity. I don't want to really let you see too much because, they're doing their own thing. But so now we're driving on the road and we're going about 45, 50. I'm now entering the freeway, and you can really kind of notice that the video is starting to shake around a little bit. And that's actually because that particular little mount I have, you can crank it down tight, but it still wiggles a little bit. The camera does wobble slightly because of how I use it. I keep it turned turned laterally, so I can get a better view on the screen for GPS. And I, played around with this as a dash cam, and it works. And as long as you're not worried about crystal clear, super solid mounts, and again, there's a reason why purpose-built dash cams are a little superior in this, is because they permanently affix, so they're very tightly bound to the surface that you're putting them on. With either that, and usually fairly tight, not oftentimes, but for the more expensive ones in the unibody versions, you'll see they usually give you a very nice clear picture without all the wobbling around of the video. But either way, it's passable. It gives me a video record, and that's why I just wanted to show that is we are in business, and that was just a cell phone, an old cell phone mount, and turning on the camera. One thing you got to remember is when you're recording, you're using up battery power, so you might want to consider some type of power source, an a 12-volt adapter of some kind to charge the phone while you're using it for this purpose. But, like I said, you probably already have one that came with the phone, or you can easily pick one up at a gas station for $3 to $5. Or just get a USB if all you have is a USB cable, say a micro USB, and one of the cigarette lighters gives you 1 amp, the 1 amp converters from USB to whatever. That may be a perfectly good option. So I just wanted to leave you with that there's a practical example. It's easily doable, and you can do it in a few minutes. I want to thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a few things. And please tune in later when I cover the more particular dash cams that I've already purchased, and we start really digging into what they're good with.